wonderful colors. All these maples. Reds, yellows, greens, purples, browns. But I'm taking off all these leaves. It is now early November. Temperatures are dropping. It's getting really wet. And this is the optimal time to work on Deciduous Bonsai. Hey, this is Jelle, growing bonsai. Have you ever wondered whether you can still wire and prune your bonsai in fall? And till when you can wire and prune your bonsai in fall? Well, if that is the case, you are at the right spot today, because we are looking at this Japanese maple that I've just wired out and pruned and cleaned up. I have gone through the defoliation, why we defoliate. I am pruning it back, wiring it out, showing you close-ups of all these little steps. So hang in there. Join me on this discovery of Japanese maple and other deciduous bonsai, wiring and pruning in fall. I've got another couple of weeks before it will get frosty. If you do wire at this period of time, always allow 4 weeks for the branches to establish. So make sure that there's no frost expected in the next month. Or, if you have the place, put your tree in a greenhouse if you do get frost after this sort of work. Now, which trees lend itself for this? Pretty much all deciduous trees can be worked on this time of year. Be careful though. For maples, for instance, I don't make any big cuts anymore. So cuts over maybe 1/3 of an inch, a centimeter, I don't make it this time of year. And if I do have to make them, I leave a little stump in place. And the stump I remove in spring. Now, after you've removed all these leaves, clean up the bench. This is where insects can hide over winter. It is where fungal infections develop. So clean it all up, wash it all down, making sure the bench is ready for the next season. There we go, almost all set. Now, to be honest, I work on these trees throughout the year. So this has been pruned a few times this year, and it has been wired in last December around Christmas time. And now I'm just going to do a gentle prune up. So there's a little stump here, and there's a nice little side branch, and I'm just going to reduce the stump to the nice little side branch. This is a fairly small cut, and should still be okay for this time of year. I'm not going to smoothen it out, that I'll do in spring. When I have duplicate branches, and I just want to keep one, just going to remove the little side branch. Of course, at this time I also look at places like this. This is where I earlier in the year pruned back, but I didn't prune back to a bud, and it died back a little bit to the next bud. So that needs to be removed. This way I just remove everything that I don't want to keep in this tree without making any large wounds at this time of year. I've been a little bit crude working on this tree, so there's a lot of places like these where there's knuckles forming that are actually just not pretty. So I'm removing these as well. Now this I can do because I know it is still quite warm, and I don't expect it to be very cold in the next couple of weeks. But if you do get a lot of cold weather now coming up, this is better done later in the year. Problem with maples, of course, is that in early spring, say after the middle of January, early February, you have the risk of bleeding off this tree. So for me, I don't really care about it, because I know it is mostly water coming out and the tree will live without real problems. But some people really worry, and particularly if you need to make big cuts, I wouldn't do it in early spring. I'll wait till middle of spring, once the tree has actually settled into growth. But these things that I'm now removing, all these little stumps, that is exactly where fungal infections can enter the tree, because the dead wood is infected and then can continue on into the living tissue. So I like to remove as many of these as possible now. And what I already mentioned, right, I do this throughout the year. I also do this in the middle of winter. So it doesn't have to be in October, November, early December. It can be after that. But yeah, you just have to protect it a little bit against frost. Remove all the branches that have very long internodes where you're like, well, it's never going to be part of the final design, might as well remove it. Here there's 2 short branches, so I can remove the long one here. Remove one from the knuckle. This way I just go through the whole tree, cleaning the whole thing up. And once I've done that, it is of course time to also take bit of wire out and see whether you need to gently wire out the tree. Now this tree needs a lot of wire, I think, because it's not very pretty at the moment. So let me stop pruning and start wiring. You can wire and prune at the same time. You just have to pay attention that you don't wire too much, unless you like wiring for nothing. I don't like wiring something and then cutting off the branch that I've just wired. This is the fine pruning that you need to do at least once a year. And because over summer you can't really see what's happening, that's why I do it now. This time you can also see little buds starting to appear here on these branches. So you see that there's buds coming up on places where you don't really need buds. And if you rub them off now, then they're gone. And next spring they won't bud out. I do this actually throughout the winter. I just look at my trees every once in a while and I look at buds popping on the branches where I don't want them, so I don't need to prune later on. Well, with all of this done, it's now time to more seriously look at the branch structure. If you look at this branch, this is nice, and then this comes up. And actually I would like to have it more horizontal, as a bit of a hand stretching out. This is quite long, but I don't think it's going to be too long. So let's remove these dead sections here again. And there in the middle is one as well. And then I'll just take some 1.5 millimeters of aluminium wire. And I'll just wire this branch out. Here also don't overthink it. There's a little bit of a scarring from last year's wiring. So I'm going to flip the wire around and wire it in the opposite direction. So I don't enforce the scars that are there and I actually create potential scar in the opposite direction, so it becomes less visible. Now here there's two branches next to each other. I want to be able to separate them, so I'm going to continue on a little bit further, allowing me to bring them apart. Then I go here, there's the junction, the wire comes down, over, and you can then wire the side branch here. Note that it's very loose around it, and that's part of the branch being too thin. I don't want to put a lot of pressure. Push this down. This more horizontal. Can put it a little bit further down, like this. I think this branch is now pretty reasonable. And if we flip it around, I think you can see now from the front these branches are much more horizontal, aligned above each other, and they really form two individual branches. And I could do the same thing with this whole pad, wire it out, and I might actually want to bring this further down like this. Let me very quickly wire this and bend it. Running out of 1.5 millimeters of aluminium. I think last winter I had the same problem. Didn't I? Last winter also run out of 1.5. Anyway, let me just very quickly put some wire here on these branches. And this is 2 millimeters of aluminium, which is on the thin side, and I might have to actually do a double wrap. Why do I use the 2 millimeters even though I think it is too thin? Well, I think you know the answer. Basically, I don't want to put more pressure on the bark than needed. This is a Japanese maple, and Japanese maples have a thin bark. So I basically just start with a little bit of wire over the junction here. Loop this around gently, not too tight, and just anchor one branch to the other. Then I take the other side and I can do the same thing here. I just go up, gently looping it around the branch. At this junction I am going to continue beyond the junction, and at this point it doesn't really matter which junction I take. I could have taken that one, it's slightly thicker, but this works out well for me right now. And here also I go 1 or 2 loops beyond this junction, just like that. Wire the one branch gently, trying to not push any buds off, trying to not break the branch, and at the same time trying to not put too much pressure on the bark, like this. Continue on along this branch. So I should have paid attention, because now I'm just making my own life very difficult. I could have just started here at this junction. And now I have doubled up on this branch, anchored it on both sides, and both of these have been independently wired, even though there's also a connection between them. Now I'm going to wire this down gently. And at this time of year, maple branches are still quite supple, but don't overdo it. And these are now also at independent heights, right? Just like this. And this one I can also give a very gentle movement, something like this. These are still standing up, and I can now take thinner wire and wire these individual side branches. So here's a little side branch I don't need. Then there's a little dead section that I didn't cut off. Take a bit of wire, lay it across the junction, gently loop it around the branch without putting too much pressure on it so the bark doesn't get damaged too much. Do the same thing on this side. There we go. Now this is actually a leaf stem. Cut the little end. Then this can come down a little bit as well, so it is in the same general angle. And this the same story, right? Put it across the junction, wire first in parallel with the existing wire, then go down the branch, wiring out all the way to the end. The big plus right now is the buds are still very small, so the risk of pushing the buds off is very low. It's not zero, so still there's a need to pay attention, but they're quite supple, these branches. The buds are still young and flexible. Now I'm tempted to not wire this out completely, but I could connect these two. Just like this. Take the thin wire, lay it parallel to the existing wire so it doesn't cross. Follow the path predefined by the existing wire. Now follow the path all the way till the end. Then this small one is also completely wired. And I can do the same thing here now, where I just loop this wire around the branch here, remove this little dead stump. I need to take my scissors. Go up on the other side. Leaf stem. Clip the wire off. Position this in fashion that you actually like. Something like this. Now this is just a gentle first wiring. In a second, when the whole tree is wired, I can actually start repositioning all the branches so they come together as the tree. But this is the rough shaping now of this pad. Could bring this one up a little bit, so we get a little bit more 3D volume in here. Of course, after wiring, or before wiring, whichever you prefer, it is wise to give these a little bit of a dormant spray. And dormant spray is just a soap oil mixture that suffocates insects and insect eggs sitting on your tree, and with that you ensure that you don't get a large volume of pests in the earlier weeks of spring. Aphids, for instance, like to sit on your tree, and allowing those to sit on your tree over winter is okay if they're dormant, but once they wake up and they start taking the liquids from your tree just weakens. Right, can you tell? So this is how it is now shaped, and this is how it can go into spring. All wired, all put together. And now I just need to do the rest of the tree. Now this is a forest group planting. It's actually a clump consisting out of 5 individual seedlings that I put together a few years ago. And it is not very fast in development because I always let it grow too coarse and then I cut back too much. And with that it is always slow. Like here, this is now a nice side branch, but this whole section should actually come off. And I do that and I have another big wound, which then takes quite a bit of time to be repaired, actually. Don't think with these pruners I can get it off cleanly. This really is about the maximum size that I still do in fall. These sort of cuts are also very good to be done in early spring, just as the tree has started to bud out. This is slightly risky. I'm going to cover this up also in cut paste in a minute, so that the wound can seal off. I thought I had some here. Yeah. I just use this cut paste putty for these sort of wounds, and I just push a little ball over it in the hope that the cambium doesn't dry out too much and reduce the infections, and hopefully over winter already get the start of healing. Now, and in case you're wondering, this is an axial wire clipper. So these are made to cut wires with. Very, very nice little scissors. If you are wondering what to ask for Christmas, Sinterklaas, New Year, whatever you want to celebrate in the next coming months, I will link through to my best gifts for somebody who does bonsai. And yeah, I recommend having a look at it. Maybe sharing that video to some friends who have you on their Secret Santa list. Might give them some good ideas for gifts that are actually very, very useful to you, rather than just something that they thought of. Just tell them what you really want. Share the link. And yes, it goes beyond bonsai wire. Useful to have. Can be quite costly. But yeah, only you know what you need. So it might not be a great gift. Keep in mind when wiring and positioning branches, bonsai is 3D, so it goes up and down, left and right, and not just one directional positioning. Give it some movement. Now, one of the key things that I think you should take away from this video is what wiring really does for your bonsai. And what it does is, if you look at this image and at the images at the beginning when I just defoliated, you'll hopefully see that the tree has become a lot softer. The lines are more gentle, most of the angular growth is out, and I've positioned the branches to be much more smooth. So there's no straight lines, there's no straight branches, everything just flows. And that is something that wiring can do. Now, as these branches mature, they'll get a natural shape to it, and at some point these branches will not need to be rewired anymore. At some point I can just go into a clip and grow method where these main branches are all set, and then I can work with just the branches that come over the year. Maybe add a branch wire here or there, but most of the time I will wire just pretty much nothing. You already see it in these little twigs. I'm leaving those alone. The more I wire these, the more unnatural it becomes. So I've mostly wired here the primaries and the secondaries to really position those. Now for aftercare, I don't have any specific aftercare for this tree. This tree just goes back onto the bench where it was, and it will just sit there until it got really, really cold. And when is it really, really cold, and how do you care for a tree then? Well, that is the topic of another video, which I can very much recommend. That is right there. And before, I already mentioned if you need any gift ideas, that's a nice video over there. And with that, I'm going to leave you alone. I wish you a nice winter, keep your trees safe, keep yourself warm, and see you next time.